Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Gyan Bhakti. We are currently exploring the scripture Mysticism of Mahabharata. Commentaries by my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananda Ji Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So in today's satsang, we will be studying the symbolism of Krishna and Arjuna. The traditional prayer of invocation at the beginning of this chapter that we narrated together, let's do it again just to invoke Nar and Narottam, both of those holy personalities. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udiriyet. So this is the chant. So Nara and Narayana were great sages, divine manifestations who incarnated as Arjuna and Krishna respectively. They exist as well within the life of every individual as the individualized soul and its divine essence, God. This is made more clear by an excellent parable presented in the Upanishads. Upanishads are scriptures of profound wisdom. There are two birds of similar plumage, looking alike, resting on the same tree. One bird simply looks on and watches as the other one goes on compulsively eating the bitter and sweet fruits. When the restless bird eats a sweet fruit, he thinks that the next fruit he picks is also going to be sweet. So he picks another one eagerly. If that fruit happens to be bitter, he then picks another one, hoping that the taste of the next one will counteract the previous one. So on and on he goes, picking one fruit after the other. All the while the other bird merely sits serenely contented watching this bird. This pattern continues until one day the restless bird becomes tired of his vain existence and looks up towards the serene bird that has been his inseparable friend. At that time he realizes, I am the same as that bird that merely witnesses. I can be as calm and serene as he is. When that realization dawns, the enchantment breaks and the two birds become one. Similarly, in the Mahabharata, Arjuna represents the individual soul or jiva that is constantly affected by the fruits of karma. Krishna represents Ishvara or God, the divine self that merely witnesses. In human life, every unenlightened soul is like Arjuna, experiencing pleasure and pain that result from eating the fruit of the tree of the world process. Due to Maya or cosmic illusion, the soul feels itself separate from God and is constantly involved in experiencing the bitter and sweet fruits of its karma, the joy and sorrow that result from the thoughts and actions of the soul in this and in previous lives. This continues from birth to birth until an individual develops vairagya or dispassion and attains the mystic realization that the soul within him is none other than the witnessing eternal self. This realization of the eternity within one's own heart is known as God realization or self-realization. In other words, that bird that is tasting the fruits, realizing and looking at the other bird that is serenely watching. That is the soul, the one that is watching. The moment the soul wholeheartedly turns towards God, it recovers its intrinsic divinity. So we are all essentially divine. We just forget that in the illusion of Maya. It realizes its essential nature and the whole world process terminates. There is no longer two separate birds. There is no more tree. There are no more fruits to eat. All is God. Sarvam khalvidam Brahma, which means everything is God, manifestation of Him. When one realizes I am Brahman and becomes liberated, he has become victorious in the battle of life. This is depicted in the Mahabharata as Arjuna, the individual soul, is led through the battlefield by Krishna, the indwelling witness in every being, until victory is attained. So that is this beautiful episode from the Upanishads. So now let's get into how the Mahabharata came into existence. How was it written? It is said that Brahma, the creator, was concerned that the Vedas and the Upanishads were too difficult for the masses to understand. So he asked great sage Vyasa to compose a scripture that was highly interesting, that would give intense delight to the mind, that would provide fascinating stories and practical guidance, and would gradually lead one's mind to the deeper spiritual truths of life. Filled with an overpowering inspiration to help mankind in this way, Sage Vyasa set his plan for the Mahabharata in motion. His first task was to find someone capable of taking down quickly and accurately enough the thoughts that flowed from his mind. Doubtful that any human being could take such an dictation from Vyasa, inspiration from him, he asked Lord Ganesha, the deity of knowledge, to take on that challenging task. Lord Ganesha agreed. The story says on one condition, that if Vyasa continued dictating without interruption, he would go on writing. However, if Vyasa stopped dictating for even a moment, he would just walk away. Vyasa accepted but imposed a condition of his own, that Ganesha should write only after thoroughly understanding what the sage had uttered. And so the story says, Vyasa started dictating and Ganesha kept writing and kept up with him. Each time Vyasa saw that Ganesha might get ahead of him, he inserted some highly philosophical material that would be difficult for Ganesha to understand. Thus, Lord Ganesha had to stop a little to scratch his head, so to speak, and by that time Vyasa was ready to compose again in a most eloquent way. So this is another way of saying that Mahabharata is full of material, stories, insights that are very deep as well as very simple, both. This story is intended to show that Mahabharata contains pleasant stories, lucid writings about very simple subjects, as well as there are jewels, thoughts of immense value which require our profound attention and reflection, even meditation. When we reach the middle of the Mahabharata, for example, we discover, as we had previously stated, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, a pure diamond of the most condensed wisdom, a summary of the entire Mahabharata, and indeed the Vedas themselves. So with this, we conclude our satsang for today. This is Swami Nikhilanand. Om Tat Sat.